Hi everyone, back again after a very long time. So I was having some issue with my throat. I was having some cough and cold. So for that I was having some difficulty with my voice, so I decided to put that backend series on hold. But now I'm fine. So back to business. So we will continue our journey with learning backend development with JavaScript in Node.js. So in the previous video we have learned about data modeling, where we have discussed about how we can define the database schema for various projects which we usually build in production in day-to-day life. There we have learned about the various types of data type in which way we can store data in our database. In the previous video also we have not written a single line of code, if you keep in mind, about how the data models are actually coded, right? So in this video also we will code very less. Rather than that, we will understand about what we are going to build in the upcoming videos. So in the upcoming video we are going to make a project, a to-do list application backend API, where the users can log in, sign up obviously, and he can create his or her to-dos, and he can also delete his to-dos and all the CRUD operation which exists in the data related terms. So for that, the very important step, the first step of every backend grade production development is to set up our environment first, followed by that planning how the database is going to look like. That is the data modeling, which we have already learned and understood in the previous video. So we are going to do the data modeling of the to-do list application first, followed by that we are going to set up our backend project, about how our system should be made before actually diving into the coding perspective of the project, so that the code becomes easier to understand and much more maintainable by other users. Because in production, if you write your code with a lot of bugs and your understanding of the code is difficult, people will just slap you or that like that also. Okay, people will say bad about you, right? So with that in mind, let us first understand about the to-do list application, about the data collection which we are going to build in today's video and the upcoming series. So let's go to our Chrome and draw and understand about how that application is going to look like. So I am in my Chrome. Just sorry for that. So here we are going to build the APIs, what you call the collection, how the collection is going to look like. So to-do list application is mainly going to consist of two collections. One is the user collection, one is the to-do list collection. Now in fact, since our project is small, if you want, you can just combine the to-do and the user in one collection only. But for the simplicity of this project, I'm going to make two different collections so that it is easier for everyone to understand. So the first collection which we are going to build first and diagrammatize first is the user collection. I hope my screen is visible. Yeah. So the user collection is actually contains the details about the users, which will allow the users to be identified uniquely. So let's write over here user collection. Followed by that, the identification of the user. So the first identification point of the user is his name. So what is the data type of the name? So the type will be of string type, obviously, because name is alphanumeric. Yes, also alphanumeric, also like Elon Musk, his son's name is alphanumeric, right? So name, followed by that you need to identify the user uniquely. So for that, let us assume that he will log in with his email ID, obviously, because email ID is always unique. So if you want, you can also keep your phone number. You can also ask the user to enter the phone number to maintain his unique identity inside the platform. So I will not go to that thing for the time being. Let's keep the email as string and also password with which the user will log in. Okay, now this is password can be of numeric type also if you want to store some pin to authenticate the user, but that is up to you. Now in the fourth place, you can keep the to do as a reference also. If you don't need, you can omit that also, because we are going to use this email for the time being to reference the to-dos, because this email will be used to identify the to-dos. Means this email will be linked with the to-dos so that we can identify which to-do is created by which user. As simple as that. So let's create another collection, which is the to do collection. Okay, so the to do collection will have few things to do. Okay, so every to do which we create is going to have a title, which is going to be a string type, string string type. Okay, followed by that every to do is going to have some or the other description if you need. Now this data modeling is up to you. This can be depending upon your requirements and my requirements. They can be different, right? Description, CRIPTIN. This is also going to be a string type. Followed by the title and the description, there can be a status which will indicate whether the to do is completed by the particular user or not. So status, and this can be a boolean type. Boolean means true and false. How we can set it, we will see. Okay, boolean. So this is a new thing which we are learning, that if we want to store the status of a thing, that is true or false, whether it is completed or not, so we can use that status as boolean, means true and false. So title, description, status, and after this the user email, most importantly user email, which is going to be an identifier to understand which user has created this to do. Using this email only, we are going to fetch the to dos in the later part. So that's all about the controller which we have defined. So we have defined the two models, which is the user model and the to do model. So the user model has having three parameters or attribute. One is the name, the email, and the string, which is of string type, and the password, which is also of string type. Followed by that, the to do. The to do collection is actually the collection of to dos, which is having the title. Every to do will have a title followed by a description, then the status, whether it is completed or not. Now since whether it is completed or not can be true and false, so I'm using the boolean type for storing that value. Followed by that, there is another parameter called user email, which is used to identify which user has particularly created an email, created this to do, right? So with that, that's all about the to-do list application data modeling. Now we will go to our VS Code and we will see how we can set up our environment before directly going to coding. So let's go to VS Code. So we are in our VS Code. So I have something written over here. So I'm in my VS Code. So I have just created a folder called to-do list backend. So if you can see the folder name from here, to-do list backend, and inside this place we are going to start coding the models, the controllers, the routes, everything. So I have not done a single thing. I have just created a folder to-do list backend, and I have just opened my VS Code inside that folder. As simple as that. Now inside this, the first thing which you need to do is to open the terminal inside the VS Code. You can also open externally also, but since I want to keep the things, do the things from right here, so I'm doing it from here only. Okay, the first thing which you have to do, we already did it in the previous videos as well. So npm init, which is we want to initialize our backend project. So npm init. So it is telling that whether we want to keep the package name as to-do list backend. So I totally agree with that. Just press enter. Version also 1.0 will be fine for me. Description is, you can give a backend API for to-do list application. Okay, followed by that entry point index.js will be fine for me. Test command, we don't need it. Get repository, we don't need it. Keywords not necessary for the timing. Author, yes, I will write my name. What's the issue in that? Okay, license, we don't need it. Okay, so it's saying that whether everything is fine or not. So just press enter and we are done. Right now, the next thing which we actually need or we do in production is we install the packages. So the packages which we are going to need for this project for the time being only is Mongoose. Now since we are going to link the data models with MongoDB, we need an external package called Mongoose. So Mongoose is an open source framework developed on the MongoDB, which comes with various packages and you call the pre-written codes and functions which make our dealing with MongoDB and Node.js very easier and very seamless. So for that I will install Mongoose. So npm I mongoose. Okay, or you can just write npm install mongoose, anything. Just press enter. It will take 5 to 3 seconds and let's see how long it takes. So it's done. It's saying that we have added 19 packages. Okay, that's fine. After that we have to make some directories and few files. So what are the directories we will just make now? So the first directory which we usually make is the models. Okay, now models is a place where you actually define the data models which we have just created a few minutes earlier. Okay, so inside this model we define the models of the user and the to do. We will define it shortly right after making the project structure ready. So after making the models, the thing which you do is to make the another folder outside this only, which is the controllers. Okay, so controllers is the folder which will have the code which will allow you to write the logic of the code in various places. That is, the actual logic of the backend projects are written inside the controllers. Okay, after that the another thing which is the routes. Okay, again outside this routes. Now routes is the place where you define the routes which is actually making our task easier by calling the functions from the controller and exposing it to a particular routes. Now what is routes? How can we define routes? We will come to that in some other video, but we need to set up. So routes is the folder which you need as of now. So after making the routes, the structure pretty much is all right. Now the last thing which you will probably see in many of the backend project is another folder which is the middleware folder. Same also it will be outside as well. So middleware, middle. Okay, so middleware or middlewares, anything. This is the place where you actually write the code for the middlewares. So middlewares are nothing, they're just utility functions. They allow you to handle files before they are actually going to the controller code. So how middleware works, we will just see that in some other video. So suppose you are having a code in your backend where there is no necessity of uploading images or some sort of file to the backend. So for that you need a package called multer from the npm only. So the code of that multer about the file handling, getting the file path, uploading the file, all those things are done in the middleware portion of the multer. So the code for that thing is written in this middleware folder. We don't need this for the to-do list project, but in some other projects we do need this sometimes. Okay, so that's all about the setup. Apart from this, we will create two files. One is the app.js. Okay, now about the code in the app.js, we will not discuss it in this video. And the next thing, which is the index.js, which is actually the entry point of our backend project. So since you have mentioned in the package.json that your entry point is index.js, you need to have an index.js file which will serve as a starting point of your backend project. Means your compiler will start executing of your code from the index.js. Okay, so with that in mind, you need to have the scripts also. So the next thing, you have to define the types as the module.js, since the common JS is just an older version. Next thing is the scripts. So we need to define our start script as node index.js. So with all that as done, we are just good to go and write the model, which is the user model first. So inside the model folder, just create a file which is the user model file. So it will be user.model.model.js. Node.js. Okay, inside this we are going to define our user schema. So for that, just import the mongoose which we have just installed now. Okay, after installing mongoose, the next thing which you probably need to do is you have to write the user schema. So just press enter, write const user schema, schema equal to new mongoose. So mongoose will say that yes, mongoose, this is a schema which I am defining. So that schema will have some properties. Okay, what properties we will come just after this. Okay, now after the user schema is made, we have to export this user schema which we have just made. So simply write export, and since we do not have any other thing as exported from this model, we will just write export default mongoose.model user schema, which is the schema which we are going to define just now. Now an interesting thing about MongoDB is that the user which you write over here in the MongoDB collection, it will be stored in the plural form, which is users. S will be added. So that's the interesting way of MongoDB of storing the collections. So the story behind that I will come up in some other videos, but for the time being you have to remember that user what you write over here, that is user, will be stored in the plural form. In to do also it will be stored as to do's. Everything which you write over here will be stored in the plural form. Okay, keeping things aside, let's come back to the user model. So the first thing which the user is going to have probably is his name. So we'll write type of the name as string. Now since this is a required parameter, that means that every user is going to compulsorily enter his or her name. So I'm going to make the required property as true. Apart from this, every user is going to have his email. This email is going to be of type string as well, string. Since this email is also going to be a required parameter, because we are going to authenticate the user on the basis of his email. So apart from this, it will be also true, and the password is also going to be of true type. Right now, if you need for your project, you want to store the password as some numbers, so you're good to go with that. Right. So after the keeping these three things in consideration, we will move to the to do model. Now in case you want to keep in track about when the user was created, when the user account was created, you can just enable, put a comma over here, just write timestamps as true to make sure that MongoDB keeps track of when this particular user was created or updated. Right. So with that in mind, we are done with the user model. Now slowly we'll go to the to do model and we will understand how we can design that. So for designing the to do model, just create another file which is to do.model.js. Okay, so the default things is we have to import mongoose from mongoose, then we have to export a schema, to do schema. What is going to be in the schema we are not bothered of as of now. Next we have to export the to do schema which we create as to do. Now over here, any name you can keep, this is up to you. Since this is my to do collection, so it will be to do like that. If you want to keep it as just a minute, if you want to keep it as to do collection, that's up to you. Be comfortable, but for the timing I'm just keeping to do. So I've mentioned in the user collection that it is stored in the plural form, so for this case it would be to do's. S will be added. Okay, that's fine. So the next thing that every to do will have, that is the title. Title is going to be of string type. Type is going to be of string. Followed by that, every to do will have a title which is compulsorily required. So I'm enabling this as required is true. Description, that every to do is going to be having description, CRIPTION. All right. Followed by this is going to be a type string, required will be of true type. Then we had a property called status, which will keep whether the to do is completed or not. So for the status, it is going to be of boolean type. Now here I've given a parameter as default. That means that by default the to do will be not completed. That means default will be false. Okay, this is a status which is going to keep in track whether the to do is completed or not. So by default we are assuming that to do is not completed, so for that reason only the to do is added. So keeping that thing in mind, the next thing is the user's email, which is very important. Okay, email. Okay, this is going to be of type string, this is going to be of true, because this is on the base, it is on the basis of the user email we are going to find the to do of a particular user, right? The next thing is a timestamp as true. We will enable it, which will allow us to keep in track about at what time this to do was created or updated by the user. So that's all about the to do model.js. So if you have done up to now, if you have understood this, a very good congratulations to you. So in this video we have learned about how can we set up our production grade backend system so that we can proceed slowly writing the controllers, the routes, the models, the middlewares like that. So we have not discussed much. We have only discussed how can we plan about the model of the to-do list application or any backend project. In fact, how can we diagrammatize the things so that the things are kept simple. So without directly jumping into coding, first it is important that you learn to diagrammatize the things, understand it visually, and then slowly set up your system, set up your environment, set up your code editor, and then slowly proceed with the coding part. Remember that we have not yet connected the MongoDB with our code base. How it is done we'll see in the next video itself. That is how when we connect the MongoDB with our code base. Okay, so with that I would like to end this video. In the next video we will see about how can we connect MongoDB with our project base. So thanks for watching. I will see you in the next video. Till then, keep learning and keep exploring. I will see you very soon.